Welcome to Jennifer with Coffee, a mindset podcast for people who are looking for real change. I'm Jennifer Lauer, writer, yogi, and fitness fanatic. Lately, I've been having lots of coffee meetups, long, honest conversations that delve into mindset, identity, choices, and habits that shape our lives. I kept thinking how I wanted to share these conversations, so here we are. Each episode moves in 3 beats: an inspirational story, an interview with thinkers, builders, athletes, and artists, people who want to share their own transformations. And we'll end with a brief meditation to practice calming the nervous system. If you've been connecting with the stories and conversations here, I've also written some fiction that explore emotional spaces. One is an AI dystopia, and the others are part of a paranormal mystery series. So if you're ever curious, you can find them on my website, jenniferleelauer.com. Today's inspo is based on something that my youngest son told me. He is a visual artist. He was telling me about his process one day, and he had some wise advice that I've now shared with many people, many different kinds of artists, writers particularly, because I think it is worthy of many different arts. He said it first to me, and I just find it really helpful. He was explaining how when he makes art, the way he stated it was make it exist first and then make it good. So his thought with drawing is that he'll just make the drawing first. The first layer is just to make that exist first. So if it's a character, he does the shape of it, the loose shape. I've heard other people say a similar thing, but for some reason, it really connected that he said, make it exist first, then make it good. It's really how a writer greets the blank page. It takes away a lot of the perfectionist desire to instantly have this masterpiece. And really how you make something good is by making the initial bit of it exist first. And then it becomes good in the revision. It becomes good in the layering. It becomes good in the details. Anyway, it helped me a lot. And so I hope that it helps you too. He's a wise little one. And now for our interview. Heather Prete is a beloved teacher and guide with over 25 years of experience in helping others to heal their inner worlds. Her formal contemplative training spans 9 years of Tibetan compassion practices. She has studied under masters across India and Europe and learned directly from Thich Nhat Hanh himself at Deer Park and Plum Village. Heather is known for her compassion, knowledge, and humor. She's a certified mindfulness facilitator at UCLA Mark and subsequently an affiliate teacher of their mindful awareness classes. She's a co-creator and master teacher for the Den meditation and hosts 5-day and month-long mindfulness silent meditation retreats. Heather also sees individual clients weekly to help guide them through internal knots and support them in creating well-being and stability within themselves. Hello, Heather. I'm so glad to have you here. Welcome to Jennifer with Coffee.
Thank you so much.
So to start us off, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and what brought you to the work you do now?
Sure. I started practicing and studying around 25 years ago. I began by learning from books, which most of us do, right? So I had found a book a long, long time ago, before I knew anything about practice, called A Heart as Wide as the World by Sharon Salzberg. And this was really when I was going through a massive amount of suffering in my life. I was in a lot of emotional pain. I was in my early 20s. I was nannying. At that time, I had gone to the Hamptons with the family whose kid I helped take care of. And I had a day off. I went to a bookstore. I always had a very empathetic heart. I was always very sensitive. The title of that book just called to me. And when I read it, she was telling stories about her teacher, Deepa Ma. Deepa Ma was this compassionate figure, and she actually became an enlightened woman. There were these stories of Deepa Ma's stillness and equanimity and fearlessness and compassion. And there was something in me that recognized that. And I thought, this is how I feel like my essence is. This is what's underneath all this stuff, all of this pain and this suffering and fear and anxiety. And in that moment, I just felt her like leap into my heart. So it was kind of like a mystical experience. And then I lost that book. I had no idea, what the title was. I had no idea. The only thing I remembered was Deepa Ma. We didn't have lots of access to the internet back then. This was a while ago. It was sort of like it got lost and that was it. And then I kind of went on with my life. When I was practicing later, I'd kind of forgotten about the book. I didn't really realize that it was a book where she was a Buddhist meditation master. It kind of went just into a distant memory. And I was studying Thich Nhat Hanh. I was studying his book on one of his books on mindfulness. He's a mindfulness master who just recently passed. He said a few things right at the beginning of the first book that I read by him. And again, it was one of those things of recognition where it was like, oh yeah, this is it. And I just remember having the thought, oh, this is the truth. And so in Buddhist psychology or science of mind, however you want to label it, it's about transforming our suffering as human beings. So I had these two figures, one Deepa Ma, who had this equanimous compassion, this resiliency and expansive heart, unshakable heart. And then Thich Nhat Hanh, who was explaining how we can come to this present moment to transform the habits of mind that create suffering. Those two figures really are who influenced me to continue on into a deeper training. I immediately hooked into it. It was just 100% right. So one of the things that we talk about in Tibetan Buddhism were imprints. So I was seen as having imprints, which just means that there's some familiarity with a process before you have necessarily been trained in it. And so I went into Tibetan Buddhism very deeply because that was what was available at that time, that was English speaking in Chicago, and started doing, 6 hours a week at one of the center where I was training and did 9 years there. And then eventually moved on to mindfulness and secularization of practice, etc., training working through UCLA's Mindful Awareness Research Center. My background basically is Buddhist psychology, Buddhism, and then also the science of mind, neuroscience of practice. So many of us enter in through the suffering that we are dealing with and then looking for a way to transform that, as well as come to our true nature, this beautiful, compassionate heart that we all, deep down inside, we know that we are.
That's really lovely. In this podcast, we like to talk about transformation, particularly when there is a moment in life like you had when you read that book the first time. You just kind of had this knowing, right? Like this felt true to you. Can you tell me about another time when you had a transformation where you moved from one version of yourself to another? I feel like that's just like this magical spot that happens multiple times over a life. There's something encouraging for people to hear how different we all are in those moments of transformation, what causes them, and then how we work through them. So could you tell us about a time like that for you?
Yeah, so this is an interesting question, and I'm probably going to ask you some questions.
Sure.
When we talk about transformation, I'm curious, like, what is your definition of transformation?
Often we set out to be a certain version of ourselves. And then through life experience, through suffering, through joy, that definition changes. Transformation is maybe the point when you become a more defined version of yourself. For me, the way that I see transformation is, first of all, I'm fascinated by it. I feel like it's a deepening. When I think of the onion peeling off, maybe we start with that outer edge and then we slowly get deeper and deeper into the onion of our
Okay,
life. So we
okay.
become closer and closer to who we are because we're peeling off, maybe we're peeling off society, we're peeling off our family, we're peeling off expectation. Because the more you know yourself, the less external things bear on who you are. It's kind of a becoming unbecoming at the same time.
Yeah, so I mean, what you're basically describing is you're describing the micro moments when we clear the mud off the diamond of our true nature. So it's these micro moments of slowly coming into awakening. This is sort of why I was asking what your definition of transformation is, because I'll talk about a little bit about what I think is a problem, something that can veer us off the course. So in other words, you're talking about peeling back the onion layers. And then there's habits of mind that put more layers back on or re-adhere the layers. Transformation is often, it's not linear, honestly, until something is completely transformed, which is rare for people in daily life. Usually it's something that we have to create a habit of continuing to tend to. When you go deep into practice, so like I do long retreat, as you know, so I'll sit at like 6 weeks at a time in silence. When you go deep into practice, there's something called fetters that are removed. And fetters are the things that fetter us to samsara, or the cyclical existence of suffering. And those fetters can be removed temporarily or permanently, depending on your karma, which just means cause and effect where you are at that moment. Usually what's happening is we're actually transforming habits instead of removing fetters. Okay, so habits are going to water seeds within us and our store consciousness. So removing a fetter would be like the seed is removed from your store consciousness, so you'll never re-embody that obscuration or that habit of mind again. But most of us, what we're doing is we're watering seeds in our subconscious or our store consciousness, and that seed will, when it's watered, will come up into our conscious awareness, and then it will affect our speech and our actions and our perceptions. If anger is in everyone, everybody has the capacity for rage. I mean, this is just a human condition. And if I water it over and over again with, let's say, television shows or angry thoughts, then the anger comes from the subconscious into my consciousness. It colors my awareness of the world. From there, my speech and actions follow. So what we're learning to do is not water the seeds that cause difficulties. We want to create new habits that water the seeds maybe of an opposing force, such as loving kindness, or just abandon the things that water the difficulties like anger. That takes consistent application. Some people have very dramatic experiences, near-death experiences, where all of a sudden their mindset will completely shift, or maybe deep, intense experiences that stick in long retreat. That's possible. That's 100% humanly possible. However, it's not usually how it goes for us who are just living our lives. There's usually not something that's so dramatic that we have a massive shift that sticks. So I'm sure many people who are listening have had momentary experiences that have stayed maybe for a while. All of a sudden they realize that something is not the way that they thought it was or it appeared to be. And they live in that space for a while only to see it fade. Like, have you ever had a spiritual experience that lasted for a while and then it kind of faded?
Yes. That's why I think reminders are so important. It's kind of like you were talking about with the book. You read something, your mind expands, your heart expands, and then maybe it fades. And then you read a new thing or you come back to it somehow and you remember that's right, like that's the truth. Or you can just keep following that. As it fades, you can be like, I remember I read this book that really changed how I felt. Yeah, I definitely think it fades. Honestly, I feel like that's a huge part of what we're doing here is reminding people of whatever this means to them, to just be reminded of our unique, beautiful truth.
Yeah, and that's the key. You know, in Buddhism, they say that the perspective is our human life is about forgetting and remembering, forgetting and remembering. People attribute this idea of forgetting to lots of things, like forgetting to be mindful, forgetting to be this, forgetting to be, practice joy. But actually, the true teaching means forgetting our true nature and then remembering our true nature. This human life is filled with opportunities to be reminded, but we have to seek them out. It's like you said, like, oh, doing a podcast about our spiritual selves, or that's why people go to church. That's why people practice in nature, go for hikes. This world is a world that can either anesthetize us from our hearts or help connect us to our hearts. We have to have wisdom as to what we take in. So, wisdom, what am I listening to? Wisdom, what am I watching? Wisdom, what kind of conversations am I having? Wisdom, what are my thoughts doing? And that wisdom is what allows either our lives to become a spiritual practice and micro moments of awakening, or a hell realm, the sowing the seeds of suffering. We have choice there. And this world can be both. That's what's so amazing about our lives, is that we live in a non-dualistic world, meaning that all opposites coexist. Beauty and difficulty coexist. And it's about what we are cultivating and taking in.
Can you give an example of a way that we might remind ourselves or anesthetize ourselves, like you were saying? Like what's like a simple way that someone could see the difference between us reminding ourselves of our truth or anesthetizing ourselves against it?
Yeah. One of the reasons that I ended up studying Tibetan Buddhism when I did is because it was the only place that I could find in Chicago at that time that was a Buddhist, where there was an English speaking monk to teacher, because Thich Nhat Hanh emphasizes the three jewels. All Buddhism does, but in the readings I was doing at that time, and that's a Buddha Dharma Sangha. And so we need a community, we need the teachings, and we need a teacher. So that's one way, seeking out a teacher. This is so important. It is so important if we really want to go far on the path. My work since the shutdown and since UCLA Mark doesn't offer the courses I teach anymore and such, my main work is really just working with, I have clients that I speak to weekly. Um, and it's so that people can stay on the path. That's what they're doing. So we want to have a Sangha, spiritual friends. Who are you surrounding yourself with? So are we surrounding ourselves with people who are looking to escape their suffering through distraction or consumption? Or are we spending time with people who are looking to remember who they are, tap into mindfulness or love or spirituality or spending time in nature? So that's one. It's like, okay, my Sangha, my community. Who is my Sangha? It is, it's said in Buddhism that for a monk to leave the monastery is as dangerous as going to go sleep on a mountain filled with lions. Who we are associating with is really like the biggest reminder. And if you can have one spiritual friend, you have a Sangha. The Dharma are the teachings, right? So if whatever your spiritual life is, so books are so important. Books, podcasts, people might listen to the radio, or oh, why not when you're driving put on an audiobook. I'm listening to a book on the Eightfold Path right now that I listen to when I drive. When we look and see, what is my mind doing? We want to really guard our mind. So is my mind cultivating seeds of separateness or anger, jealousy, all of these things, depression? Can I bring my mind to something that reminds me that I am not alone in this world, that we are interconnected, that there is an essence, a knowing that flows through all things, that gives us our life force? It's like, what can I do to bring my mind back to that? So this world can be a pure land, which means basically is the teachings, reflects our inner goodness, our heart mind, or it could be a hell realm, which means it reflects and waters the seeds of difficulties in us. Teachings, a teacher, and a community. Those are the most powerful way. Teacher can be through books as well. Those are the most powerful ways to stay connected.
Do you have a book that's like a good, if someone isn't able to be in touch with a spiritual teacher, do you have a recommendation?
I'll give a few different books based on what people might be drawn to, because spirituality, we find our own unique doorway in. There is no one spiritual
Of
practice that is
course.
the correct practice. One thing is I really believe Thich Nhat Hanh transmits through his books that if you're interested in mindfulness, there's a book called The Miracle of Mindfulness by Thich Nhat Hanh. If you're just interested in to read about mindfulness, and then if you're interested in transforming suffering, he's got a book called No Mud, No Lotus, which is really wonderful. So that's about using the compost of the suffering of our life to develop wisdom, which is what we do in Buddhist psychology, right? So Buddhist science of mind, we take our suffering and we transform it. I love reading Martin Luther King's speeches. So anything that waters the seed of our hearts. And there's, like I said, the book A Heart as Wide as the World, if you want to get inspired by a spiritual meditation master, Deepa Ma. We want to make sure that we're reading a book that's written by somebody who has transformed their own mind. There's so many books out there that are written by people who just want to be an expert on something. And those books aren't going to water the seed of your heart in the same way. They just won't.
Yeah.
Right? There's transmission through books. The quality, that author, the energy that was arising as they wrote will be something that can water the seeds of your heart.
I love this
But I
natural
feel it.
idea of watering the seed of your heart. I love the idea of suffering as your compost. Oh, that's such
Yes.
a beautiful analogy.
Yes. And that's the thing. That's what's so cool about Buddhism or secular mindfulness, secular compassion practices, is that we actually use our pain as a way to develop compassion and wisdom. It is actually necessary to suffer, which I don't mean we create suffering. What I mean is to be human, to awaken. If we weren't human, if we didn't have this human life, then there would be no reason to practice. The conditions of our humanness must be the basis of our awakening. Otherwise, the system wouldn't work.
Why would we
It
need it?
would be. Yeah, exactly,
If
exactly.
we were already awake, how would we
That's
become
right.
awakened?
There you go. That's it. And if there was no way to wake up, then life would not have meaning. We have this sort of capacity to wake up, get beyond this sort of like physical realm, this idea of self. Back to your original question, there have been many awakenings throughout the path. I mean, one was I was on long retreat. It was like day 27 or 26 into it. For people who are listening, the way that the Vipassana retreats or the insight meditation retreats, which are Burmese and Thai forest, the way that they work is that just for like about 14 hours a day of practice, mindfulness, meditation, and then you go to sleep and then you wake up and you do it again. And you do that in silence. You don't really look at people, kind of look down or avoid eye contact. You can drop into sustained mindfulness, and that leads to something called concentration. I was on like day 26 or something like that. It had been a long time. I was sitting in my room after lunch and I heard somebody chanting in the room next to me. They were doing a sadhana, which is it's like a chanting prayer kind of thing, which normally I'd be very happy about. But for whatever reason, because my subconscious was open from all the practice, it watered a seed of anger in me. I was like, how dare they? I've been silent for 26 days. I can't believe that they're making sound. And all this rage started coming up. So I sat and I was looking at the rage and I realized we get insight. So when we have an energy come up, we can see it. So we're not caught in it. We can watch it and observe it. And by watching and observe it, we can see its root, its origin. That seed is what we want to transform. The anger is like the plant that's grown from my subconscious into my conscious awareness or the tree. There's a seed and we want to get to the seed. Otherwise, we can't transform things at the root. And they just re-arise. But the good news is for those who aren't going to be going on long retreat, is that every time you bring mindfulness to the tree, it gets weaker and weaker. And then over time, it doesn't get so easily watered. Or when it does get watered, it comes and it goes down very quickly. So I was looking at it and I saw a root cause of just like feeling the feeling of being a child and a feeling that like my needs came second to the adults in the house. So this was a transference right onto the situation. As I looked at it, it softened, right? And the anger subsided. But then I went to go to my interview. We do a 15-minute check-in with a teacher. So they make sure you're not going crazy, probably. So you go in and I said, oh, I saw this thing and it transformed. And she wasn't listening. She did not attune and she cut me off. And at that moment, the rage just went insane. It went insane. It was like something like, oh, this story doesn't matter, which is a standard response. I wasn't telling the story. She didn't understand the depth of my practice. So, of course, my ego got there, but also just feeling cut off from this exploration of transformation. This teacher, when you go to Spirit Rock, I think there's like 6 teachers that teach these long retreats. So you get a rotation. She was teaching the next couple days, and every time she spoke, this rage was coming up in me. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be one of those people they write about in the book that stands up in the middle of the retreat and starts yelling, shut the F shut the F up, because it was like the amount of rage, just hearing her voice, watering the seed of rage. I was so filled. I was doing everything I could. I was just sitting with it, went to the top of a hill and I even let out sound. I was doing everything. And finally, I was like, oh my God, I can't go out like this. Like, I can't believe I'm going to be at my first 30-day retreat and I'm going to go home angry. So I grabbed a teacher named Temple Smith, who I adore. He was walking past me and I broke my silence and I said, Temple, what do you do when the past is in the present and you're overcome with anger? I said, I can't meet it. My mindfulness can't meet this anger. And he was like, do you feel the anger right now? And I said, yes. And he was like, okay, drop in and feel it. And then I want you to label it. I dropped it and I felt the anger. I was like, this is the voice in my head. It's like anger, 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 right? It's like you just keep saying anger. But it was like, I was just filled with it. So it was like anger, anger. It's like, okay, now go ahead and move your awareness to that tree and start looking at the tree and label it tree. So I turn my awareness to the tree and I'm like, tree, 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 right? Because we're filled with anger. So we have become the anger. Tree, tree, tree. And he's like, okay, now start looking at the leaves. And I'm like, tree, tree. He's like, look at the green. I'm like, tree, tree. So I'm starting to bring my mindfulness to the trees. I start to see leaves blowing, green. I'm like, tree, tree. It's like, okay, now take that and go back inside and look at the anger. So then I went back and I made contact with the anger and it was like anger, anger. And then of course a thought went by, that woman is such a, and then it was like anger, anger, anger. Okay, now go back to the tree. So this is called titration, where we're going and we're collecting mindfulness, bringing it back to where the energy that's observing the difficulty. Then when we get overwhelmed, we go back, we get some more mindfulness, we bring it back. So I did that and I did that for a 24-hour day, right? I was sitting in the hall. I was doing that practice, labeling, label. And at some point, all of a sudden, my mindfulness was able to sustain with the anger without becoming it. It was like a volcano got uncorked. Beneath the anger was all of this love and joy. The moment that my concentration permeated the anger and stabilized, all of a sudden the anger transformed and all of this love, all of this joy just erupted through my whole being. And I just became filled with rapture and bliss. That joy, that love was radiating from me. It just sustained through, saying goodbye to that teacher. I felt love for that teacher. I felt love for all of the other Sangha members that have been practicing this place of, which then goes to equanimity. So the rapture is not meant to stay forever, but it's just one part of this transformation. It then goes to this equanimous, still place. But this rapture, all this love, it's beneath all of our obscurations. When you see that through direct experience rather than just reading about it, that creates a permanent change. Not that you're always there or that you always remember, but that you know it's possible, that you know it's there. Might have micro moments of this throughout your life. Maybe it's a moment of peace when you're looking at a sunset or feeling interconnected when you are cuddling with an animal or, or when you're listening to a friend and you feel the stability of the compassionate mind. Believe those moments, that this is our true nature, that this is what's beneath things, when all the crap disappears because of the awe of beauty of nature or the joy of interbeing. Yes, we're not going to live in that space. Transformation does not mean that we live in that space 100% of the time. That's not what it means. But transformation is about understanding that the way things truly are, and then continuing to condition ourselves to be there more often. Over time, this becomes part of our worldview. If you had a glimpse, if you had a moment, it could last for 10 seconds, it doesn't matter. We recall that. Recall it again and again and again and again. And just say to myself, this is my true nature. Gentle.
Wow. I'm curious when you're telling that story, I didn't expect it to be this explosion of joy. And I'm wondering, was that a surprise to you,
Yeah.
or had you been there before so many times? because I think of the hierarchy of emotions. You've seen the charts where it tells you like what the highest vibe feelings are. And so if you're feeling like a really strong rage, my expectation was where my brain was leading me, not my heart. You were going to say, okay, I worked with the tree and going from such an extreme anger state that just underneath it, it's like you skipped all the levels and went straight to joy and so much love, even toward that teacher who was the symbol of your anger at that point. Yeah, I'm just curious, were you surprised that that was the reaction at all?
Yes, I was. I had been in contact with my true nature. But what was surprising was the sort of volcanic overflow, like a dam had broken. It was years of anger, probably from being 13, that had kind of blocked the good flow of one of the ventricles of my heart. We talk about internal knots in Buddhism, that we need to transform the knots to have good flow in our psyche. What surprised me was pressure of backlog of the heart's love that was freed up. It's one thing to transform and you kind of get back to yourself and you feel kind of peaceful and like you can feel like love and it could be expansive and joy, all those things. But it was like a visceral feeling of something being unplugged and a backup of this energy just exploding out. That was something that surprised me. And I think that that's the power of getting to the root.
That was a great story of transformation. I'm going to
Yeah.
remember that.
Oh, good.
That
Yay.
was really the work that you do now. So you work with people one-on-one, or how do you work now with meditation and mindfulness? What does your
Yeah.
teaching look
Yeah.
like?
I record, they're live recordings. It's like people usually watch retroactively. So for the den, a couple days a week on Thursdays and Fridays, I do a little quick drop in 20-minute sessions at noon, little lunchtime sessions of compassion and somatic grounding. But my main, and I do teach courses every once in a while as well online, but my main work right now is working one-on-one. For most people, it's usually a weekly thing. I help people to transform difficult emotions and cultivate positive emotion. It's not therapy because I'm not a therapist, but it has that structure. For me, the practice was what really transformed so much of my trauma, difficult emotions, a history of chronic anxiety. I help people to use these practices to go towards healing and healing our psyche. I also teach silent retreats. So now I usually do a retreat about once a year. Or I teach short retreats.
Okay, great. And we'll get to all of the ways if someone wants to work with you in the end here. But I do have a question for the sake of this podcast. If someone's listening and you were mentioning what we consume is so important when it comes to music and books and entertainment, how that can affect us. Could you offer something that someone could do maybe today? Some small way for them to connect to themselves, to become more mindful if they're just feeling the chaos of modern life.
Yeah, so it's interesting because everybody's personalities are different. So doors ways in are different for different people. So I'm going to give just a few things based on your personality type. If you're somebody that feels like you connect to your heart, you're like a heart-based person, I would say joy practice is really powerful. You can do a loving kindness practice on the spot. So as you're walking around, loving kindness is a well-wishing for ourselves and others. You might see a kid that's like running around having fun, and you send out a phrase, may you be happy, may you be peaceful. And then there's other ways. One thing I would do if we're somebody who we find we get caught in thoughts quite a bit, say labeling is a really good practice, labeling and abandoning. If we find ourselves getting caught in thoughts and our worries or angry thoughts, and every once in a while just stop and observe what's my mind doing right now and label it. So it's like, oh, that's a future thought. And then can we come to the present moment? So like feeling our feet on the ground, taking a few deep breaths, noticing what's in front of us. So little ways of coming home.
Those are great. I love the planting your feet on the ground and noticing. I find for myself feeling like, what is my body doing right now? I'm sitting
Yeah.
here, my hands are here, my glasses are on my nose.
Yeah.
Noticing all of those little details really helps bring me into the present. Those were all great ideas. If you need a little mindfulness moment, which we all do, try one of those out. Well, this has been such a lovely conversation, Heather. Thank you so much. Is there anything that you'd like to share that we didn't get to?
I want to reemphasize that all human beings have the capacity to awaken, and no matter how much mud is on the diamond, all human beings contain true nature of the heart mind. This is something that unifies us all. It doesn't matter what experiences we've had, what we've done, what we've been through. This is who we are. This is what unites us all. And we all have the desire to be happy. In these times when we're looking at things that create division, we can see what we all have in common.
If someone is interested in working with you as a one-on-one coach or to join your den meditations, do you have a website, your social
Yeah.
handles? Let us know where they can
Yeah.
find you.
Yeah, so you could go to Heather Prete on Instagram. So it's Heather Prete Wisdom. My last name is Prete, Prete, and it's Heather Prete Wisdom. I usually post there when I'm having classes, etc. But another way to get a hold of me directly would be going to my website, which is heatherprete.com. On that website has a contact me. And
Perfect.
yeah, and it also has a description of private sessions and what those look like. So if you're interested, and you can go ahead and it's going to take you right to my calendar.
Perfect. Go check that out. And
Yeah.
we end each episode here on Jennifer with Coffee with this very important question. How do you take your coffee, Heather?
Oh my gosh, so this is like the saddest story ever because right now I'm histamine responses to food, so I'm on this ridiculous low histamine diet, which you had the luxury of dining with me when I was like, okay, I can have a piece of plain fish with salt and some steamed vegetables. So right now it's like I have to use a low histamine coffee, which is like a mold and toxin free coffee called Purity. It is mixed with coconut cream and ghee. So it's really
That actually sounds pretty good to me.
it sounds good in theory, and maybe if I was a barista and making it in a certain way, but yeah, it's not, it's kind of like I get a little oily, like, surface on my coffee these days. So I'm kind of missing heavy cream and regular dark roast, but it is what it is.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on and chatting with us about mindfulness today. A request before we take our breaths today. We're putting together our first Q&A episode, and we'd love to hear from you. It could be a question about your life or even something discussed on the podcast. If you feel like sharing, send your questions my way at Jennifer Lee Lauer on Instagram or email at questions@kingsofcontent.com. That's content with a K. So at Jennifer Lee Lauer on Instagram or questions@kingsofcontent.com. I'm really looking forward to hearing from you. Finally, to end each episode, we take 3 intentional breaths together. Today's breaths are on feeling unstuck. If you've felt stuck anywhere in your life, let's breathe to free that feeling and get back into the flow. Take a deep breath in and hold it at the top. As you exhale, feel the body relax and release. Keep the exhale going. Let all of the air out. And a second breath in, holding at the top. Exhale, release the shoulders, release the jaw. Unclench any muscles that have tension. And take a third inhale and hold it there at the top. Exhale, release, a long exhale. May you get back into the flow and release any feelings of tension throughout your day. Remember these breaths. Thank you for listening to Jennifer with Coffee. Follow us on Instagram at Jennifer with Coffee and on Substack. This has been a Kings of Content production. Music by Oreo CC.